It was supposed to be a quick trip. Saturday morning, bright and early, I headed out to the hardware store to grab a new set of screws and a better drill bit. Nathan, my 10-year-old, had been complaining for weeks about the wobbly bookshelf in his room, and I'd finally carved out the time to fix it. Sophia had kissed me on the cheek before I left, saying she'd stay behind to sort through some old boxes in the garage. Everything felt normal. But when I came back an hour later, something was off. I noticed it as soon as I walked in. The house was quiet, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that made your skin prickle. I called out, "Sophia," but got no answer. Nathan was at a sleepover, so the house should have been empty, except for her. I headed toward the garage, thinking maybe she was still sorting through boxes, but that's when I saw it, Nathan's bookshelf. Fixed, sturdy, perfectly leveled, with the tools I'd left behind neatly lined up on the counter. It stopped me in my tracks. I stared at the shelf, trying to process what I was looking at. I hadn't touched it yet, and there was no way Sophia would have managed to fix it on her own. She hated dealing with tools. So who had done this? The answer came a second later when I heard low voices from the garage. A man's voice, deep and casual, followed by Sophia's unmistakable laugh. I moved toward the garage door slowly, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. The door was slightly ajar, just enough for me to push it open and see inside. There they were. Sophia was standing close, too close, to a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, muscular, with the kind of easy confidence that made my blood boil on sight. He had a tool belt slung low around his waist and was holding a wrench, like this was his house, his garage. Sophia was smiling at him, leaning in just enough to make my stomach twist. She reached out to touch his arm, laughing at something he'd said, and I felt the air leave my lungs. I shoved the door open, the loud creak breaking whatever moment they were having. Both of them turned to look at me. Sophia's face froze. For a split second. There was something there. Guilt, maybe, but she covered it quickly with a bright, too casual smile. The man, on the other hand, didn't even flinch. He just stood there, relaxed, like he belonged. "Ah, damn," Sophia said, her voice a little too cheerful. "You back already?" My eyes darted between the two of them, then landed on the bookshelf tools. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice flat, cold. Before she could answer, the man stepped forward, wiping his hands on a rag. "Hey, I'm Eric," he said, extending a hand like this was some friendly introduction. "Sophia mentioned the shelf in your kid's room. Figured I'd lend a hand." "Lend a hand," I repeated, ignoring his outstretched hand. My voice was steady, but I could feel the heat rising in my chest. "Who the hell are you, and why are you in my house?" Sophia stepped in quickly, as if to smooth things over. "Eric's just a friend," she said, her tone light, as though this was completely normal. "He's a handyman. I met him through the gym. When I told him about the shelf, he offered to help. That's all." I stared at her, the words barely registering. A handyman. From the gym. Since when did Sophia bring strangers into our house to do the things I was supposed to do? Eric held up his hands, his grin still plastered on his face. "Didn't mean to step on your toes, man. Just trying to help out." "You fixed my son's shelf," I said, my voice tight. "It wasn't a big deal," Sophia cut in. "Honestly, Adam, I don't know why you're making this into something it's not." The sheer casualness of her tone made my hands clench into fists. "What didn't you tell me?" I asked, turning to her. She rolled her eyes, crossing her arms. "Because I knew you'd overact, just like you are now." "Overact," I snapped. "Sophia, I come home to find a stranger in our garage, fixing something I said I'd handle, and I'm supposed to just shrug it off." Eric cleared his throat. "Look, maybe I should get going." Yeah, I said, cutting him off. "I think you should." He hesitated, glancing at Sophia like he was waiting for her permission, which only made my blood boil more. Finally, he nodded and headed toward the door. When he was gone, I turned back to Sophia. "You want to explain what the hell that was?" She sighed dramatically, like I was the problem. What do you want me to say, Adam? Eric's a friend. He helped out. That's it. The way you were standing with him. I shook my head, my voice trembling with anger. That wasn't just a friend. Oh, please, she snapped. Not everything is some grand conspiracy. You're always looking for something to be mad about. Her words hit me like a slap, but I wasn't backing down. Not this time. Something was wrong. And I wasn't going to let her deflect her way out of it. But if she wasn't going to give me answers, I'd find them myself. I couldn't sleep that night. The house felt colder, quieter, like it was holding its breath. Sophia had gone to bed hours earlier, acting like our fight in the garage hadn't happened. She didn't try to apologize, didn't try to explain. She just closed the door behind her, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I sat in the living room, staring at the bookshelf I was supposed to have fixed. The perfection of Eric's handiwork only made the knot in my chest tighten. It wasn't just the shelf, it was everything. The way she'd stood so close to him, the way she'd laughed, the way she dismissed my anger like I was the unreasonable one. But it wasn't unreasonable. Something was wrong. I didn't have proof, not yet. But every instinct I had was screaming at me to dig deeper. The next morning, Sophia acted like nothing had happened. She was in the kitchen, sipping her coffee and scrolling on her phone when I walked in. "Morning," she said without looking up. "Morning," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. She glanced at me briefly, as if assessing my mood, then turned her attention back to her phone. For a moment, I thought about confronting her again. But I knew it wouldn't get me anywhere. Not yet. Instead, I waited until she left the house. She'd mentioned she was meeting a friend for brunch, and the moment her car disappeared down the street, I started searching. I didn't even know what I was looking for, a clue. A sign, something to confirm what my gut was telling me. I started in the garage, scanning the workbench, the shelves, even the trash bin. Nothing seemed out of place. No forgotten tools, no receipts, no notes. Next, I went to our bedroom. I felt a pang of guilt as I opened her nightstand drawer, but it was quickly drowned out by the memory of her standing so close to Eric. I rummaged through the drawer, careful not to disturb the way things were arranged. Still, nothing. Then I checked the closet. Sophia had always been meticulous about her clothes, arranging them by color and season. As I flipped through the hangers, I noticed something odd, a jacket I didn't recognize. It was a man's jacket. Black, leather, and too large to be hers. My chest tightened as I pulled it out, holding it up to the light. There was no way this was Sophia's. She hated leather. She'd always said it was too heavy and made her feel claustrophobic. So whose jacket was this? I searched the pockets, my hands trembling. In the inner pocket, I found a small slip of paper, a dry, cleaning receipt. The name on the receipt made my blood run cold. Evan Carter. My brother. I stared at the receipt, my mind racing. Why the hell was Ivan's jacket in my house? He lived 3 hours away and hadn't visited in months. Or at least, that's what I thought. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway snapped me out of my thoughts. Sophia was back. Panicking, I shoved the jacket back into the closet and closed the door. My heart pounded as I hurried downstairs, trying to act like I hadn't just uncovered something that felt like a ticking bomb. She walked in, smiling, carrying a small bag from the bakery. "I brought muffins," she said cheerfully. I forced a smile, my mind still reeling. "Thanks." She tilted her head, studying me. "You okay? You off?" "Just tired," I lied. She shrugged and went into the kitchen, humming softly as she unpacked the bag. I stood there, watching her, my hands clenching and unclenching at my sides. Evan's jacket, Sophia's casual dismissal of everything, Eric in the garage. The pieces weren't fitting together yet, but I could feel the edges of something dark and ugly taking shape. And I knew one thing for certain: this wasn't over. Not even close. The jacket haunted me. All day, I kept thinking about it, about the name on the receipt and what it could mean. Evan and I had been close growing up, but our relationship had cooled in recent years. He was always charming, always the life of the party, but he had a knack for crossing boundaries. The last time I'd seen him was over Christmas, and even then, something had felt off. I tried to brush it off as sibling tension. After all, he'd been distant before. But now, with his jacket in my closet and Sophia acting like she had something to hide, I couldn't ignore the gnawing doubt creeping through me. I waited until Sophia took Nathan to a friend's house that afternoon before calling Evan. "Adam," he said, his voice warm and familiar. "Long time, no talk, man. What's up?" "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "I was just wondering, have you been in town recently?" There was a brief pause, and I swore I could hear him smile. "Nah, why? You miss me already?" The pit in my stomach deepened. "No reason," I said. "Just thought I saw your car the other day." "Not me," he replied quickly. "I've been swamped with work. You know how it is." He was lying. I could hear it in the way his voice tightened, the slight edge of defensiveness he couldn't quite hide. "Yeah, I guess," I said. "Anyway, just checking in." "Good to hear from you," he said, his tone too bright. "We should catch up soon." I hung up, my hand trembling as I set the phone down. He was hiding something. I was sure of it. But what? That evening, as we sat down to dinner, I couldn't stop staring at Sophia. She was chatting with Nathan, asking about his day, laughing at his silly stories like everything was perfectly normal. But I knew better. "Who's Evan to you?" I asked suddenly, cutting through the light-hearted chatter. Sophia froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "What?" "You heard me," I said, keeping my voice calm. "When's the last time you saw him?" She blinked, her expression unreadable. "I don't know. Christmas, maybe." "Why?" I leaned back in my chair, watching her carefully. "No reason. Just curious." Her smile was tight, forced. "Well, I haven't seen him since then." "Why are you asking?" Before I could answer, Nathan piped up. "Uncle Ivan came by a couple of weeks ago." Sophia's head snapped toward him so fast it was almost comical. "What are you talking about, sweetie?" she asked, her voice a little too sweet. "Remember," Nathan said, oblivious to the tension in the room. "He came over after school one day. You said not to tell Dad because it was a surprise." The room went silent. Sophia's face had gone pale, and I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. "A surprise?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, clearly scrambling for an explanation. "It wasn't. He just stopped by." "Adam, it wasn't a big deal. Then why tell Nathan to keep it a secret?" Her jaw tightened, her eyes flashing with irritation. "Because I knew you'd react like this. Even wanted to borrow some tools, and I didn't see the point in making it a thing." "A thing," I said, my voice rising. "You lied to me, Sophia. You lied to our son, and now his jacket is in our closet." "It's not what you think," she snapped, her composure finally cracking. "Then tell me what it is," I demanded. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment I thought she might tell me the truth. But then she stood up, grabbing her plate. "I don't have to explain myself to you," she said coldly, storming out of the room. Nathan looked at me, confused. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, buddy," I said, forcing a smile. "You didn't do anything wrong." But I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to unravel. Because if Sophia wasn't going to tell me the truth, I was going to find it myself. The tension in the house was suffocating. Sophia avoided me entirely the next day, keeping to herself while Nathan spent most of his time outside playing with friends. I watched her move through the house like a shadow, checking her phone constantly. Her face pinched with irritation every time our paths crossed. It was as if the mask she usually wore around me had slipped, revealing something colder, something calculating. By late afternoon, I'd had enough. I couldn't sit in silence any longer, letting my thoughts spiral. I needed answers, and I was done waiting for Sophia to give them to me. The dry cleaning receipt still burned a hole in my pocket. Even Carter. It wasn't just his jacket that was out of place. It was everything. The quick denials on the phone, Nathan's innocent admission, And Sophia's defensive walls all pointed to something bigger, something I wasn't ready to confront but couldn't ignore. I decided to start where it all began, the jacket. Waiting until Sophia was in the shower, I crept back into the closet, pulled it out, and examined it again. My hands trembled as I checked every pocket, running my fingers along the seams, searching for anything that might confirm the storm brewing in my mind. Then I found it. Tucked deep in an inner pocket was a folded piece of paper. My stomach flipped as I pulled it out, unfolding it carefully. It was a receipt from a hotel in town, boutique place I recognized, one that catered to couples looking for a romantic getaway. The date on the receipt was from 3 weeks ago. I stared at it, my mind blank for a moment. Then, like a tidal wave, the realization hit me. Ivan hadn't been borrowing tools. He hadn't stopped by for some innocent visit. He'd been here, in town. Meeting Sophia behind my back. The room spun around me. My breathing quickened, and I gripped the edge of the bed to steady myself. I knew I needed more. If I confronted her with just this, she'd twist it around, make me doubt myself. I needed something undeniable, something she couldn't weasel out of. I waited until Sophia left to pick up Nathan from soccer practice. She'd left her laptop open on the dining room table, and though I hesitated for a moment, the knot of betrayal in my chest pushed me forward. I opened her email. At first, there was nothing unusual. Work correspondence, spam, a few shopping receipts. But then I found a folder labeled Personal, hidden deep in the sidebar. My heart raced as I clicked it open. There they were, emails. Hundreds of them. Some from Eric. Those were bad enough, filled with flirtatious banter that made my skin crawl. But the real blow came when I scrolled down further. Ivan's name was there too. My hands trembled as I opened one of the messages. I can't stop thinking about last time. Are you sure Adam doesn't suspect anything? Meeting up again this weekend. The words blurred as tears stung my eyes. Another email, just a week later, confirmed what I'd been too afraid to believe. You're amazing with Nathan. It's like he knows, even if he doesn't say it. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up, though. Adam's getting suspicious. The world felt like it had shattered around me. I slammed the laptop shut, my chest heaving. My mind replayed the memories, piecing together the lies, the cover-ups, the stolen moments I hadn't questioned at the time. Sophia's distance. Ivan's long silences. The way Nathan had started calling Ivan his cool uncle, with an affection that suddenly felt like something more. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the depth of it. The years of deceit. The implications that Nathan, my son, might not even be mine. I heard the front door open. Sophia's voice called out, cheerful and light. We're back. I stood there, the hotel receipt still clenched in my hand. She walked into the dining room, her smile faltering when she saw me standing by the table. Her eyes flicked to the laptop, then to my face. What's wrong? She asked, her voice cautious. I held up the receipt, my hand shaking. You want to explain this? Her face went pale, and for a moment, I thought she might deny it. But then, she did what she always did, she laughed. Adam, she said, her tone exasperated. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is, I snapped, my voice rising. Because right now it looks like you've been sneaking around with my brother. As she opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her silence was deafening. Nathan peeked into the room, his small voice breaking the tension. Mom, what's going on? Go to your room, I said without looking at him, my eyes locked on Sophia. Sophia's jaw tightened, her mask slipping. You're making a scene, she hissed. Can we not do this in front of him? Did you think about him when you were sneaking around? I shot back, my voice trembling with rage. Her lips pressed into a thin line. I'm not doing this with you, she said coldly, brushing past me. Not now. But I wasn't letting her walk away this time. Not after what I'd just found. This wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Sophia didn't come to bed that night. She stayed downstairs, nursing a glass of wine while I sat in our room, staring at the ceiling. My mind was a storm of questions, accusations, and a fury so deep it felt like it could swallow me whole. The emails, the jacket, the hotel receipt, it was all there, laid out like a cruel puzzle. And yet, she still hadn't admitted anything. Not a word of explanation, not a shred of remorse. She just walked away, like she always did when confronted with something she couldn't talk her way out of. By morning, I had made a decision. If she wouldn't give me the truth, I'd take it from her. Sophia was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs, making breakfast as though the night before hadn't happened. Nathan was at the table, eating cereal and chatting about school. She smiled at him, answering his questions with practiced ease. I watched her, the weight of what I'd uncovered pressing against my chest. For Nathan's sake, I kept my voice calm. "Can we talk?" Sophia glanced at me, her expression neutral. "In a minute," I said firmly. "No." Nathan looked up, his brow furrowed. "What's going on?" "Go upstairs, buddy," I said, forcing a smile. "We'll talk later, okay?" He hesitated, glancing between us, before sliding off his chair and heading upstairs. As soon as he was out of earshot, I turned back to Sophia. "I found the emails," I said, my voice low but steady. Her hands froze on the counter. Slowly, she turned to face me. "What emails?" "Don't play dumb," I snapped, the anger bubbling to the surface. "Iverick, the hotel. How long, Sophia? How long has this been going on?" Her eyes widened, but only for a moment. Then she let out a sharp laugh, shaking her head. "You've completely lost it." "Don't," I said, my voice trembling. "Don't gaslight me. I saw them. I read them. You've been lying to me for years." She crossed her arms, her jaw tightening. "I don't know what you think you found, but you're wrong. I barked, my voice rising. "I found a receipt for a hotel room with Ivan's name on it. I found emails about Nathan, about how he knows. What am I wrong about, Sophia? Tell me." Her face went pale at the mention of Nathan. For the first time, she looked genuinely shaken. "You not thinking clearly," she said, her voice quieter now. "You're putting pieces together that don't belong. Stop lying to me." I slammed my hand on the counter, and she flinched. For a moment, the silence between us was deafening. Her eyes darted to the door, as though considering an escape, but then she sighed, her shoulders slumping. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "So it's true." Sophia didn't answer right away. She turned away from me, gripping the edge of the counter, as though it could hold her up. "It's complicated," she said after a long pause. "Complicated." I repeated, my voice cold. "What's complicated about sleeping with my brother?" She spun around, her eyes flashing. "You don't understand." "Then make me understand." I shot back. "Because right now, all I see is years of lies and betrayal. You owe me the truth, Sophia. All of it." She hesitated, her lips trembling, and for a moment, I thought she might actually come clean. But then she shook her head, her face hardening. "It's not what you think," she said again. "Stop saying that," I shouted. "Do you even hear yourself? I'm standing here, giving you a chance to explain, and all you can do is deny it. Do you even care what this is doing to me? To Nathan?" Her expression faltered, but she didn't respond. Instead, she brushed past me, grabbing her keys from the counter. "Where are you going?" I demanded. "I need some air," she said, her voice clipped. "You don't get to run away from this." But she was already out the door, slamming it shut behind her. I stood there, my hands shaking, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But I knew one thing: the truth was coming, whether she liked it or not. And when it did, there would be no going back. When Sophia walked out the door, I didn't follow her. For the first time in years, I let her go without chasing, without trying to fix whatever was broken between us. Instead, I stood there in the empty kitchen, my mind racing through every conversation, every excuse, every moment that now felt like a lie. I needed answers. And if Sophia wasn't going to give them to me, I'd get them from someone else. I grabbed my phone and scrolled to Ivan's name. My finger hovered over the call button for a moment, but then I stopped. He'd deny everything. I knew it. If there was one thing Evan excelled at, it was talking his way out of trouble. No, I needed to catch him off guard. The drive to his house felt longer than it should have. He lived 3 hours away, but I made it in just over 2, my mind running wild the entire time. What would I say? How far was I willing to go to get the truth? When I pulled into his driveway, his car was there, and the lights in the living room were on. For a moment, I hesitated. What if I was wrong? What if this was all some horrible misunderstanding? But then I remembered the hotel receipt, the emails, the way Sophia had paled when I mentioned Nathan. I knocked on the door, hard and fast. A few seconds later, Ivan opened it, his expression shifting from surprise to unease the moment he saw me. "Adam," he said, stepping outside and closing the door behind him. "What are you doing here?" "Cut the crap," I said, my voice low but steady. "We need to talk." He glanced over his shoulder, like he was checking to see if anyone was watching, before stepping further onto the porch. "No's not a good time." "Make time," I snapped. "Because I'm not leaving until you tell me the truth." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "What truth, Adam? You're not making any sense." I stepped closer, the anger I'd been holding back bubbling to the surface. "You've been in my house, Ivan. Behind my back. Don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about, but." His eyes darted to the side, and for a moment, I thought he might run. But then he squared his shoulders, meeting my gaze head-on. "Look, I don't know what Sophia's been telling you, but—" "Sophia hasn't told me a damn thing," I interrupted. "But Nathan has. He told me you were at the house, and then I found your jacket, Evan, in my closet." That rattled him. I saw it in the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes flickered with something close to panic. "Adam, I can explain." "Then explain," I shouted. "Because right now, it looks like you've been sleeping with my wife." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. For a moment, Evan didn't say anything. He just stared at me, his face pale. He began, his voice shaking. "Don't," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "Don't lie to me, Evan. Not now. Not after everything." He looked down, his shoulders slumping. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," he muttered. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. "So it's true." Ivan didn't look up. "It wasn't planned," he said softly. "I didn't mean for it to happen, Adam. But Sophia and we couldn't stop." I staggered back, the words hitting me like a physical blow. My own brother. The man I'd trusted more than anyone. "How long?" I demanded, my voice breaking. "How long has this been going on?" Ivan hesitated, then finally met my eyes. 10 years. The air left my lungs. 10 years. That was nearly our entire marriage. "And Nathan?" I asked, barely able to get the words out. Ivan didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite place. Guilt, regret, maybe even pity. "You need to talk to Sophia," he said finally. That was all the confirmation I needed. Without another word, I turned and walked back to my car. My hands were shaking as I gripped the steering wheel, my mind reeling from what I'd just learned. 10 years. A decade of lies. And now, the possibility that Nathan, my son, my world, might not even be mine. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. If Ivan thought he could walk away from this unscathed, he was dead wrong. And as for Sophia, I clenched my jaw, my vision blurring with tears of rage and betrayal. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was war, and I was going to make damn sure they both paid for it. The drive back home was a blur. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly my knuckles ached, but I didn't notice. My mind was drowning in a sea of images. Evan's pale face, his broken confession. Sophia's dismissive lies. And then there was Nathan. The thought of him shattered me in ways I couldn't put into words. I pulled into the driveway, my headlights slicing through the darkness. Sophia's car was parked where she'd left it, and the house was quiet. I killed the engine and sat there for a moment, staring at the front door. I couldn't go in without a plan, Not this time. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to think clearly. Ivan's betrayal was one thing, but Sophia, I needed to hear it from her. No more running, no more deflecting. The house was dimly lit when I walked in. The faint hum of the fridge the only sound. Sophia was sitting on the couch, her knees tucked under her, scrolling through her phone like nothing was wrong. She looked up when I entered, her eyes narrowing. "Where were you?" I ignored the question. Instead, I walked over to the coffee table and dropped the hotel receipt in front of her. It fluttered to a stop between us, and her eyes flicked down to it. "Explain," I said, my voice calm but firm. She picked it up slowly, her face unreadable. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, with an infuriating sigh, she set the receipt back down. "I don't know what you want me to say," she said, her tone clipped. "The truth," I replied. She laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "The truth. You can't handle the truth, Adam. You've already decided what you want to believe." "I just came from Ivan's house," I said, cutting her off. That wiped the smirk off her face. Her eyes widened, and for the first time I saw something close to panic. "What?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You heard me," I said, stepping closer. I confronted him. He told me everything. 10 years, Sophia. 10 years. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came out. For once, she didn't have an excuse, didn't have some clever line to deflect the blame. "And Nathan," I pressed, my voice trembling. "Is he even mine?" Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't feel sympathy. "Not this time." "A dong," she began, but I wasn't having it. "Don't," I said, my voice rising. "Don't you dare. I've spent the last 10 years loving that boy, raising him, thinking he was mine. And now, he is yours," she said suddenly, her voice cracking. I froze. "What?" She stood up, her hands trembling. "He is yours, Adam. I swear." "How am I supposed to believe anything you say?" I asked, my voice filled with venom. "You've been lying to me for years. Do you even know what the truth is anymore?" Her tears spilled over, but she didn't look away. "I made a mistake," she said softly. "A terrible mistake. But Nathan is yours, I know he is. You know." I repeated, laughing bitterly. "You mean you're guessing?" "No," she said firmly. "I'm not guessing. I made sure." Her words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to go off. "What the hell does that mean?" I demanded. She hesitated, her hands gripping the back of the couch for support. He was a baby. I had a test done, a paternity test. The room spun around me. "You knew," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You've known this entire time, and you didn't tell me." "I was scared," she said, her voice shaking. "I didn't want to lose you. I didn't want to lose our family." I stared at her, my chest heaving with rage and betrayal. "You didn't want to lose me. After 10 years of lying to my face, that's what you care about." She reached for me, but I stepped back. "Adam, please," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I love you. I love our family. I didn't mean for this to happen." I shook my head, unable to look at her. "You don't love me," I said, my voice hollow. "You love what I could give you. Security. But love. No. Love doesn't look like this." Her sobs filled the room, but I didn't care. For the first time in a decade, I saw her for who she really was. Selfish, manipulative woman who had torn apart everything we'd built. "I'm getting a test," I said finally. "A real one. And if Nathan isn't mine..." I couldn't finish the sentence. The thought of losing him was too much to bear. Sophia nodded, her shoulders shaking. "He's yours," she whispered. "I know he is." But I didn't believe her. Not anymore. I turned and walked out of the room, her cries following me up the stairs. This wasn't over. Not yet. But the end was coming. And I wasn't sure any of us would survive it. The following days were a fog of silence and unspoken tension. Sophia tried to act normal, cooking dinner, checking Nathan's homework, pretending like we weren't living on the edge of total collapse. I, on the other hand, was barely holding it together. Every time I looked at her, all I could see was even. Nathan, blissfully unaware, chattered away as usual, his innocence only deepening the ache in my chest. I loved that boy more than life itself, but every smile, every laugh felt like a knife twisting deeper. If the test proved he wasn't mine, I didn't know how I'd survive it. The day of the test, I left work early. Sophia didn't ask where I was going. She knew. She didn't say a word as I grabbed my jacket and left, her face pale and drawn. The clinic was small and cold, the kind of place where everything felt clinical and detached. A nurse took my sample, her tone polite but distant. She didn't ask why I needed the test, and I didn't offer an explanation. The wait for results was unbearable. 3 days felt like 3 lifetimes. Every moment, my mind swung wildly between hope and despair. I replayed everything Ivan had said, every tear Sophia had shed, every small detail I might have missed over the years. Finally, the email came. I sat in my car outside the house, the engine idling as I stared at my phone. My hand shook as I opened it. Paternity test results. Exclusion of paternity. I read the words again, then again. My vision blurred, and the air felt like it had been sucked out of the car. Nathan wasn't mine. The realization hit me like a freight train, shattering the last remnants of denial I'd clung to. He wasn't mine. The boy I'd raised. The boy I'd loved with every fiber of my being. He belonged to Ivan. I don't know how long I sat there, the world spinning around me. Eventually, I forced myself to get out of the car. My legs felt like lead as I walked to the door, my heart pounding with a mix of rage and devastation. When I stepped inside, Sophia was waiting. She looked up from the couch, her face tense, her eyes searching mine. She knew what the results said before I even opened my mouth. "He's not mine," I said, my voice hoarse. She didn't deny it. Instead, she covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking as she broke down into sobs. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I'm so sorry, Adam." Sorry," I said, my voice rising. "You're sorry. You lied to me for 10 years, Sophia. 10 years. You let me believe he was mine, let me raise him, love him, and now you're sorry." Her sobs grew louder, but I didn't care. I was beyond caring. "How could you do this?" I demanded. "How could you look me in the eye every day and pretend? How could you let me fall in love with a child who was never mine?" "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said through her tears. "I thought it was a mistake, a one-time thing, but then I found out I was pregnant, and I couldn't tell you. I was scared, Adam. I was scared of losing you. Don't you dare make this about fear," I snapped. "This wasn't fear, Sophia. This was selfish. You didn't tell me because you didn't want to lose the life you built on lies." She didn't respond, her face buried in her hands. And then Nathan's voice came from the stairs. "Why are you yelling?" We both turned to see him standing there, his small frame silhouetted against the dim light. His face was scrunched up in confusion, and the sight of him shattered something inside me. I couldn't do this. Not in front of him. "Go back to Betty," I said. "Why is Mom crying?" he asked, taking a hesitant step forward. "Said go to bed." I snapped, louder than I intended. Nathan flinched, his eyes wide before turning and running back upstairs. Sophia glared at me through her tears. "Do not take this out on him," she said fiercely. I laughed bitterly. "Take it out on him? You mean like you've been doing for 10 years, making him live in the middle of your lies?" Her face crumpled, but I didn't care. "I care. This ends now, Sophia," I said, my voice cold and final. "I'm done. You've destroyed everything." I turned and walked out of the house, slamming the door behind me. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there. Not anymore. Not with her. Not with the life that had been stolen from me. The night air was cold, biting against my skin as I sat in my car. Parked a block away from the house I no longer recognized as my own. The hum of the engine was the only sound keeping me grounded, but inside, my mind was chaos. I replayed the moment I saw the test results, Sophia's sobbing confessions, and the look on Nathan's face as I shouted at him. I'd broken him in a single moment. The thought tore through me, worse than any betrayal. No matter what Sophia had done, Nathan was innocent in all this. He didn't ask for any of it. And now, the boy I'd loved as my son for 10 years was upstairs, probably scared and confused, wondering if the father he adored would ever come back. But was I still his father? Could I even claim that title after knowing the truth? I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. The anger I felt towards Sophia and even burned hot and raw. But underneath it was something colder, something deeper. Grief. Grief for the life I thought I had, for the family I'd fought so hard to build, only to watch it crumble in front of me. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, breaking the silence. I glanced at the screen. Even. I ignored it. A second later. Then again. Finally, I snatched it up, answering with more force than I intended. What? What? Adam. Ivan said, his voice tentative, almost afraid. I just wanted to check in. Sophia called me. She said that things got bad. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Things got bad. Is that what she told you? That your decade of lies got bad? Look, I know you're angry, he began, but I cut him off. Angry. Ivan, I'm not angry. I'm done. Done with you. Done with her. Done with everything. You stole my life. Both of you. And now you're calling to what? Apologize. Explain yourself. I didn't want this, he said, his voice shaking. I swear, Adam. It happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Didn't mean for it to go this far. I shouted, the words catching in my throat. You've been sleeping with my wife for 10 years, Ivan. 10. And Nathan. My voice broke, and I couldn't say it. Nathan doesn't know, Ivan said quickly. He doesn't have to. He doesn't need to know any of this. I froze, the audacity of his words slicing through my rage like a knife. What the hell are you talking about? I'm saying we can keep this between us, he said, his tone desperate now. For Nathan's sake. He doesn't have to know who I am to him. You've been his dad this whole time. He loves you. That doesn't have to change. I clenched the phone so tightly I thought it might crack. You think this is about keeping secrets? I hissed. You think I can just pretend everything's fine? That I can look Nathan in the eye and lie to him the way you and Sophia lied to me? Adam, please. Don't call me again. I said, my voice cold and final. You're dead to me, even. Both of you. I hung up and threw the phone onto the passenger seat, my chest heaving. It wasn't just the betrayal that gutted me. It was the arrogance. The way Even thought he could dictate how I moved forward, how he could control the narrative even after everything he'd done. I stared out the windshield, the streetlights casting long shadows on the empty road. I couldn't stay here, couldn't go back to the house and face Sophia again. Not yet. But I couldn't run forever, either. Nathan deserved more than that. After what felt like hours, I started the car and drove. I didn't have a destination in mind. But somehow, I ended up at my parents' house. My mom answered the door, her face lighting up when she saw me. Damn. This is a surprise. Her smile faltered as she took in my expression. What's wrong? Can I come in? I asked, my voice hoarse. She stepped aside. Worry etched across her face. I walked in the living room, sinking onto the couch. Adam, talk to me, she said gently, sitting beside me. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The words were too heavy, too raw. But then they spilled out, one after another, until I'd told her everything. Sophia. Ivan. The lies. The test. When I finished, my mom sat in stunned silence, her hand covering her mouth. Adam, she said softly, her voice trembling. I don't even know what to say. I don't need you to say anything, I said, my voice flat. I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm losing everything. She reached for my hand, her grip warm and steady. You're not losing everything, she said firmly. You still have Nathan. No test can change that. Her words hit me harder than I expected, and for the first time since I'd opened that email, I felt a flicker of clarity. Nathan didn't choose this. He didn't choose Sophia's lies or Ivan's betrayal. But he had chosen me. For 10 years, I'd been his dad. I'd held him when he cried, cheered him on at soccer games, Stayed up late helping him with science projects. I couldn't walk away from that. But I also couldn't let this go. Not yet. There were still loose ends, still questions that needed answers. And I wasn't going to stop until I had all of them. Because this wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about justice, about taking back the life they had stolen from me, piece by piece. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. The pain was still there, raw and aching, but beneath it was a quiet determination. This was the end of something. My marriage. My relationship with Ivan. But it wasn't the end of me. I spent the day making calls. First to a lawyer to start the process of ending my marriage. Then to a therapist. Someone who could help Nathan and me navigate the wreckage Sophia and Ivan had left behind. It wasn't easy. None of it was, but it was necessary. That evening, I sat down with Nathan. He deserved the truth, or at least as much of it as he could handle at 10 years old. "Buddy," I said, sitting beside him on the couch, "we need to talk about some things." His eyes were wide, nervous, but he nodded. I took a deep breath. "You know I love you, right? More than anything in the world. That's never going to change." He nodded again, his lip trembling. "There are some things going on with your mom and me," I continued. "We're not going to live together anymore. It's not your fault. It's something between us. But I want you to know that no matter what happens, I'm still your dad, always." Tears welled up in his eyes, and he threw his arms around me. "I don't want you to go," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, holding him tight. "You'll always have me, Nathan. I promise." It was the hardest conversation of my life. But when it was over, I felt lighter. For the first time, I wasn't carrying the burden of lies. As for Sophia, I made it clear that our marriage was over. There were no screaming matches, no final attempts at reconciliation. Just a quiet acknowledgement that she had made choices I couldn't forgive. I told her she could explain herself to Nathan when the time was right, but as far as I was concerned, she was a chapter I was closing for good. Ivan tried to reach out a few more times, but I never responded. Some bridges are meant to burn, and ours was reduced to ashes. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding. Not the life I did before. That was gone. But something new. I threw myself into being the best father I could be for Nathan, proving to both of us that biology didn't define our bond. He was my son, in every way that mattered, and no one could take that from us. The lesson I took from all this wasn't one I'd ever wanted to learn, but it was clear now: trust is fragile, and sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who break it. But betrayal doesn't define you. How you respond to it does. For men like me, especially those in their later years, it's easy to get stuck in the idea that your family is your legacy. But the truth is, your legacy is how you live your life. It's the love you give, the values you uphold, and the strength you show when everything falls apart. I chose to stand back up, to rebuild, to show Nathan what resilience looks like. And maybe, just maybe, that's the legacy worth leaving behind.
There are moments in life where you feel the floor give out beneath you, like the oxygen's been vacuumed out of the room, and all that's left is this bizarre, slow-motion theater you can't escape from. That's what her birthday party felt like. The house was full, too full. People from her yoga class, co-workers I barely recognized, neighbors I hadn't seen in months, even her ex-boyfriend from college who apparently just happened to be in town. The music was loud, and everything reeked of too much perfume, overpriced Prosecco, and desperation masquerading as charisma. Brooke had outdone herself. Rent a bartender, a photo booth with a golden balloon arch, and that tacky LED sign behind the bar that read, "Still a Queen." Subtlety died somewhere in the driveway. I stood by the kitchen island, sipping a whiskey I'd poured myself in a short glass she reserved for special nights. Brooke hated when I used them for anything other than her wine spritzers. I used one anyway, a silent rebellion. She was already 3 cocktails in when she climbed onto the little platform near the fireplace. One heel slipped slightly on the rug, and someone caught her elbow. Laughter. She winked. Dramatic pause. Then she grabbed the mic like she was hosting the goddamn Oscars. "Everyone, She sang out, cheeks flushed, eyes dancing. Can I just say, this man right here, she pointed at me, her ring catching the spotlight, does not deserve me. Boom. Laughter. Big, obnoxious laughter. Like she just said the funniest line in a stand-up set. Clinks of champagne glasses, someone actually howled like a wolf, and our daughter, sweet little Olivia, standing near the cake table, smiled that awkward teenage smile that says, please, let the floor eat me now. And me? I didn't flinch. I stood up slowly, set my glass down with precision, walked forward just a few steps, and raised my own glass, nice and high. You're right, I said, loud enough to cut through the room. And I smiled. Not a forced one. Not a confused one. No, it was the smile of a man who'd already read the final page of the book, who knew how the story ended. More laughter, but this time it was mixed with a ripple of confusion. People glanced at each other. Was this a bit? Was he being sarcastic? Is he mad? Is she serious? Olivia looked at me, and for the briefest second, just a blink, she knew. She didn't know, but she felt something shift. I saw it in her eyes. Brooke, meanwhile, soaked in the applause like a washed-up starlet pretending she just got nominated. She waved her free hand and said, relax, babe. You know I love you. It's just banter. Come on. But she didn't say it to me. She said it to the room. To them. Because everything Brooke did now was for the room. For her audience. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the real performance hadn't started yet. That line, this man doesn't deserve me, she thought it was a joke. A dagger dipped in glitter. But it wasn't. It was a confession, a spotlight, and a cue all in one. And I was ready. I glanced over to the edge of the room, where Marcy, Brooke's best friend, stood with a half-drunk cocktail and unreadable eyes. She didn't laugh. She didn't smile. She just looked at me and gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. That's when I knew. The curtain was about to rise. And no one in that house was ready for what Act 2 looked like. The thing about a marriage unraveling is it doesn't scream. It whispers. At first, it's the slow drift. The silence that creeps in not like a storm, but like fog, dull, heavy, unshakable. Brooke started coming home later. At first, it was once a week. Drinks after yoga. Team dinner ran long. Book club went off the rails again. Sure. Except I started noticing her book club never actually read any books. And the yoga mat stayed rolled up in the trunk for 3 days at a time. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I just observed. Detached. Like I was studying a stranger who happened to wear my wife's skin. Her laughter, what used to be private, started living on speakerphone. I'd hear her in the bathroom giggling over TikToks with her girlfriends, volume way up. She'd walk past me on the couch and let out these sharp, almost reflexive laughs, like a machine programmed to perform happiness. And always Marcy. Marcy, the bestie since grad school. The one who knew every old boyfriend, every dietary preference, every eyebrow wax appointment. She was funny, quick, knew how to dress. Never married, no kids. And she was around a lot. Not just girls' nights. I mean weeknights. Random Tuesdays. She just dropped by with Ty. Sometimes I'd come downstairs and they'd both go quiet. Like I'd interrupted a ritual. They'd exchange these tiny glances. Fast. Too fast for the untrained eye. But I caught them. One night, I remember this clear as crystal, I heard Brooke laugh in the kitchen, this light, breathy kind of laugh she hadn't used with me in years. I came in just as Marcy was wiping something off Brooke's cheek. A dot of frosting, allegedly. Elliot, Brooke said, startled. You scared me. Didn't mean to, I said, flat. She poured me a glass of wine without asking, slid it across the counter like I was a customer at her bar. She didn't look up. Marcy gave me a smile that wasn't really a smile. You work too much, she said playfully. And Brooke jumped on it. Seriously. You're like a ghost lately. That's when I realized something had shifted. I was the outsider now. Not them. The next few weeks were a montage of cold dinners, one-word answers, and the slow evaporation of eye contact. Brooke stopped asking me about my day. She stopped touching me casually, accidentally, deliberately. Nothing. The sarcasm sharpened. One morning, I asked if she wanted coffee. She muttered, "Oh, look at you, Mr. Domestic. Someone's trying." Not, "Thank you." Not even a smirk. Just venom, dripped in apathy. And yet, no actual confrontation. No accusations. No big fights. That would have been easier. Instead, she turned the thermostat of our marriage down to a slow, polite freeze. The only warmth left came from someone I hadn't expected, Marcy again. But not how Brooke thought. Marcy would text the next day after awkward dinners. "You okay? She was a bit much tonight. Sorry." Small check-ins. Not flirty. Just humane. And the messages came after Brooke had gone upstairs. I'd reply with a simple, "It's fine." But I was watching now. Cataloging. Gathering. The jokes at my expense. The little digs at my manhood. The sudden switch to password-protected phone habits. All of it. The whispers had grown teeth. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was something far more dangerous. Alert. It happened on a Saturday. Midday sun, bright and indifferent, streamed through the dining room like a spotlight on a lie too lazy to hide. We were supposed to be hosting a casual lunch. Just Brooke, a few of her friends from the studio, some hummus, and overpriced organic sparkling waters. I wasn't planning to stay. I usually gave her space for these things, disappeared to the garage or the hardware store just to avoid being the background husband she forgot to introduce. But that day, I forgot my wallet. I came back in through the side door quiet, out of habit, and that's when I heard it. Brooke was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter with a glass of rose and her usual audience. Karen from Pilates. Some other brunette I didn't recognize. And Marcy. Always Marcy. I mean, "Elliot's fine," Brooke said, loud enough that the words hit like a slap through drywall. "He's just safe, you know?" Someone let out a knowing little laugh. Brooke continued. "He's predictable. Stable. Boring, if I'm honest. I need passion. I need someone who challenges me." Another voice chimed in. "Girl, say it louder." "I'm not saying I'd cheat," Brooke added, but then her voice dipped into that performative, fake whisper register women use when they want to be overheard. "But if it happened, like, spontaneously? In the right moment?" Laughter again. And I stood there. Not behind a door. Not crouched under a table. Just in the damn hallway, hearing it all like I was a ghost in my own house. She didn't even check if I was gone. Didn't care. I didn't storm in. Didn't break a plate or demand an explanation. I just turned around, walked back out the door, and got in my truck. I sat in the driveway for maybe 10 minutes. Engine off. Hands on the wheel. No music. That's when the bitterness set in, not just at what she said, but at how utterly easy it was for her to say it. Like I was a pair of loafers she'd grown tired of. Reliable. Polished. Worn. The thing is, she wasn't wrong. I am predictable. You know what else is predictable? A parachute when you're falling. A seatbelt in a crash. But women like Brooke don't value that until the ground comes rushing up. That afternoon, I didn't cry. Didn't rant. Didn't even drink. I made a folder on my laptop. Titled it, Weather Forecast. Inside, I started dropping notes, dates, screenshots, receipts. Not literal ones. Emotional ones. Memory receipts. Like how she canceled our anniversary dinner for work, but showed up tagged in someone's Instagram story at a wine bar downtown. Like how she started using AirPods all day around the house, even while cooking. No more spontaneous conversations. Like how she moved her wedding ring from her left to right hand, because it fits better there now. That comment? I archived it in the folder under Symbolism, hiding in plain sight. I wasn't playing defense anymore. This wasn't about salvaging what we had. This was about watching the storm come in calmly, methodically, and building a dam bunker while she danced in the rain. Let her laugh. Let her flirt. Let her whisper her half-truths in rooms she thinks I've exited. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just not showing my hand. Not yet. The night it really registered with me, Marcy stayed to help do dishes. Not because Brooke asked her to. Brooke had already floated off to the patio with two of her louder friends, both clutching their third cocktails and gossiping about some divorce in their yoga circle like it was sport. I was halfway through scraping dried lasagna off a baking dish when I heard the soft clink of another plate beside mine in the sink. "Let me help," Marcy said. I looked up, surprised. Brooke's friends didn't do dishes. They didn't even clear their own glasses. They treated our home like an Airbnb with service staff they forgot to tip. But Marcy, she didn't flinch. Rolled up her sleeves, tied her hair back with one of those thick elastic bands she always kept on her wrist like a bracelet, and started rinsing with quiet focus. It was such a small thing. Mundane, Really. But I hadn't felt that kind of simple, quiet companionship in months? A year? We worked in silence for a bit. I washed, she dried. It was smooth, efficient, comfortable in a way I'd forgotten comfort could be. And then she asked it, so gently I almost missed it. You doing okay? It wasn't pitying. It wasn't loaded. It was the kind of question that doesn't expect a performance in return. Just space if I wanted it. I gave a half smile. Been better. She didn't push. Just nodded. Later that night, she texted. You didn't deserve what she said tonight. Just wanted you to know that. No emojis. No gifs. Just that. And it hit harder than any dramatic declaration could have. It became a quiet rhythm after that. After dinners where Brooke barely looked at me, after parties where she laughed a little too hard at someone else's joke, after cold silences that passed for conversations, there was Marcy. A message here. A check-in there. She never crossed lines. Never flirted. Never implied anything inappropriate. But she noticed me. That alone made her feel like a different species. I began to catch myself looking for her at gatherings. Not because I was hoping for anything. Just because she brought a sense of stillness. A reminder that not all interactions had to be transactional or sharp-edged or drenched in sarcasm. Brooke, meanwhile, drifted further. She barely said goodbye when leaving for work. She rolled her eyes at my suggestions. When I fixed the clogged sink, she laughed and said, Wow, you're evolving. I don't think she noticed how fast the kindness was leaving her face. Marcy noticed. And slowly, I started remembering what warmth felt like. Not the fireworks kind. The furnace in winter kind. The presence. The listening. The moments when someone chooses to see you when they don't have to. There was a night Brooke stayed out late, networking, and I found myself at the kitchen table eating leftovers in the dark. Marcy texted, Don't let her convince you you're invisible. You're not. That night I didn't respond, but I stared at the message for a long time. Because somewhere deep down, some small part of me, a part one hadn't felt in years, stirred. A part that whispered, What if kindness could actually come back? And what if the person to remind me of that was the one Brooke always thought she had wrapped around her little finger? It was Brooke's niece's graduation party. One of those exhausting suburban spectacles with a rented bounce house, a custom cake no one touched, and folding chairs arranged in uneven rows like we were at some awkward backyard TED Talk. I was manning the grill because apparently that's what I'd been demoted to lately. Family prop number 3, the guy with tongs and sunscreen on his ears. Brooke had barely said 10 words to me since we arrived, unless you count. Can you not burn the veggie skewers this time? The thing about Brooke is, she never attacks head-on. She performs her cruelty with flair, wrapped in jokes, delivered with a dazzling smile and enough volume to guarantee an audience. It happened as I was plating burgers for the second round. Someone asked how long we'd been married. 17 years, I said. Brooke chimed in from across the yard, red Solo cup in hand, already halfway into her third mimosa. Yeah, 17 thrilling years, she said. We've got all the passion of a tax audit. Laughter. Real, ugly, shoulder-shaking laughter. Even her sister giggled. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, holding a pair of tongs over the grill, the smell of seared meat clinging to my shirt while my dignity evaporated in the heat. Someone made a better schedule and audit joke. More laughter. And then I caught Marcy's eyes. She was seated at a table nearby, a paper plate in her lap, untouched coleslaw at the edge. But she wasn't laughing. She was staring directly at Brooke, her jaw tense, fingers gripping her cup so tight the plastic dented in. Then she looked at me, and I don't know how to explain it. There was no dramatic expression, no theatrical gasp. Just rage. Quiet, controlled, focused rage. Not at me. For me. That was worse than pity. It was better, too. Because in that split second, I realized 2 things. 1. Brooke didn't accidentally say what she said. She'd waited for the moment. She wanted it heard. She wanted me small. 2. Marcy saw it all. And she wasn't going to let it go. That night, I got the message. You deserve better. That's it. 3 words. But they burned like acid and bomb all at once. I stared at it for a while before replying. So why does she do it? Marcy didn't hesitate. Because she thinks she can. Because you never push back. It sat in my chest like a weight I didn't realize I'd been carrying. And she was right. I hadn't pushed back. 4 months now. I'd let Brooke chip away at me, turn me into a punchline, humiliate me in front of friends, family, strangers. I was playing dead in the wreckage of a relationship she was actively torching. But something shifted that night. It wasn't rage. It was calculation. I replayed every party, every gathering, every time Brooke had held court with her shiny little barbs and laughed as I stood by, expected to chuckle along. I saw it clearly now. The pattern, the audience, the routine, and I also saw the crack forming in her armor. Because Marcy, her Marcy, wasn't clapping anymore. The house Brooke built out of performance and control just lost one of its load-bearing walls. And the collapse? It was coming. Quietly. Beautifully. And I was going to be standing dead center when the roof came down. The caption started about 2 weeks after the graduation party. At first, it was subtle, just more photos than usual. A group shot here. A selfie with her hair swept over one shoulder, wine glass perfectly angled in her hand. I didn't even notice until our daughter Olivia mentioned it offhand one evening at dinner. She'd been scrolling TikTok while pushing around a pile of peas. "Mom's going influencer or something," she muttered. I looked up. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "Just all the pictures. Kinda thirsty." That was all she said. But it was enough. I checked later that night. I hadn't been on Instagram in months. No reason to. I didn't need a highlight reel of Brooke's curated authentic life. But when I opened her profile, I felt something cold coil in my stomach. There she was, mid-laugh at some rooftop bar, shoulder to shoulder with a guy I didn't recognize, captioned, "Finally feeling seen." Another one, posted 3 nights later, tight black dress, smoky eyes, drink in hand, hips cocked sideways like she was still 23. Caption, "One drink away from bad decisions, smiling face with orange wine glass." The comments were what you'd expect. Fire, fire, fire. Okay, queen. She's out here thriving. Someone's having a hot girl summer eyes. Nothing technically incriminating. Nothing explicit. But she wasn't being subtle, either. She didn't post us. She didn't post Olivia. Just filtered snapshots of herself, the girls, a rotating cast of bar lighting and low-cut tops. She turned our slow-motion separation into performance art. I didn't like it, but I didn't say a word. Not a comment. Not a question. Not even a raised brow at breakfast. I just noted it, mentally tagged each post, and filed it under a folder in my mind called Documentation of Disrespect. Then one night, out of the blue, Marcy texted. Screenshot. No intro. Just the image. Brooke, leaning in close with some guy from her yoga circle, captioned, "You never know where the night leads." Right under it, Marcy had typed, "She really thinks no one's paying attention." I stared at the photo for a while. Zoomed in on the edges. Not the obvious. Not Brooke's smirk or her exposed collarbone. But the guy's hand, his fingers lightly grazing the small of her back. Intentional. Casual. But practiced. And Brooke didn't just allow it. She showcased it. She chose that picture. Chose to hit post. Chose that caption. Chose the audience. I typed back. "She wants a reaction." Marcy replied instantly. "And you're not giving her one. It's driving her insane." I didn't respond to that. But she was right. Because I'd stopped playing the game. No more subtle sighs at the dinner table. No more half-hearted offers to go with her to events I wasn't invited to. No more asking if she was coming home late. I cooked for Olivia, walked the dog, fixed the gutter Brooke said we'd just live with. And I kept receipts. Every post. Every flirty comment she liked. Every photo she tagged with the location but never me. Strategic distance. That's what it became. I wasn't punishing her. I wasn't begging her. I was tracking her. Because what Brooke didn't know, what she never could imagine, was that her loudest moments were telling me the most. And while she curated her rebellion, I was building mine. Quietly. Precisely. Because when the moment came, and it would, I wasn't going to raise my voice. I was going to raise the curtain. There's a moment in every chess game where the losing player doesn't even realize the match is already over. The board still looks busy. Pieces still move. But the outcome's been decided, quietly, several moves ago. That was me, on a Tuesday morning, while Brooke slept off another networking dinner in the upstairs bedroom. I sat at the kitchen table, black coffee in one hand, my laptop open in front of me. Cursor blinking. Bank login screen waiting. First move, passwords. I changed everything. Joint checking, now routed with two-factor authentication to my number. Brokerage account, split, reorganized, and quietly withdrawn to a fresh portfolio in my name only. Credit cards? She could keep the miles. I froze the one she used for her self-care expenses and replaced it with a prepaid card loaded with just enough to keep her unaware. I wasn't cutting her off. I was cutting her out. She wouldn't feel it. Not yet. The key was to make it look like nothing had changed. I took 3 vacation days from work and didn't tell her. While she was gone for her monthly spa retreat, I used them to clean the house, not just vacuum and mop, but strip it. Old photo frames came down. Our wedding album, boxed. The framed triptych she made of our honeymoon selfies in Tulum, pulled off the wall and replaced with a canvas print of Olivia's watercolor painting from grade school. Something real. I opened a new folder on my encrypted drive. Plan B. Inside, copies of tax returns, insurance policies, screenshots of every flirt post, every tagged location that contradicted her appointments. I even included a spreadsheet. Yeah, a spreadsheet. Labeled columns. Date. Event. Brooks claimed location. Observed reality. Witness, if any. It looked like a damn crime board by the time I was done. It wasn't for court. Wasn't for lawyers. Not yet. It was for me. Because when the lights came up, I wanted every line memorized. Every plot point rehearsed. Every exit illuminated. And then I bought the gift. Not for Brooke. For Olivia. A necklace. Simple silver. A delicate charm shaped like a compass. I had it inscribed with 3 words. Know your north. I'd give it to her when the time was right. When the house of mirrors finally shattered, and she needed something solid to hold on to. I hid it in my sock drawer beneath an old college sweatshirt I hadn't worn in years. That same night, I caught Brooke in the hallway, towel wrapped around her, damp hair clinging to her collarbones. You clean? She asked, glancing toward the living room. I nodded. Yeah. Huh. Miracles do happen. She smirked and walked past. I didn't respond. Just watched her disappear into the bedroom and thought, you're not even curious why the air feels different, are you? No, she wasn't. She still thought this was her house. Her show. Her stage. She hadn't realized the stage was rotating beneath her feet. And when it finally turned, she wouldn't recognize the set or the man standing at center. Brooke never could resist a spotlight, especially when she thought she'd earned it. The morning it started, she strutted into the kitchen like she was fresh off a red carpet instead of a hangover. Hair in a towel, phone in hand, tapping through Pinterest boards like she was planning a royal wedding instead of her 42nd birthday. I'm going big this year, she said, not to me, but to her reflection in the microwave. Like, statement level. Legacy party. People are going to talk. I sipped my coffee. Didn't bite. She glanced at me, waiting for the usual eye roll, maybe a half-hearted question about budget. When I offered nothing but a calm, sounds great, she actually looked disappointed, like a boxer missing the punch they were bracing for. That night, she kicked off the group chat. I saw the notification flash across her phone when she left it face down on the counter. Birthday bash planning woman dancing nail polish sparkles. I didn't ask, but I watched. She booked a DJ. Not some guy with a laptop and Spotify premium, no. She found someone with a light rig, fog machine, and custom remixes. Vibe curation, she called it. The backyard got scheduled for tent rental. Cocktail tables. Mood lighting. Not classy if it doesn't glow, she said, twirling a wine glass like she was auditioning for Real Housewives of Nowhere. She even ordered custom napkins, for God's sake, with "Still Not Sorry" embossed in gold script. And the guest list? Oh, the guest list was where her ego came to stretch. Everyone from her yoga studio. Co-workers I hadn't seen in years. A stylist she once fired after a blowout gone wrong. Even, especially Travis. Yep, that Travis. The guy she dated in college. The one she once drunkenly described as her unfinished symphony. When she brought up his name, she made a show of pretending not to care. He's just in town for a few weeks, she said with a shrug. No big deal. We're all adults, right? Right. I nodded. Took another sip of coffee. Marcy later confirmed it. Sent me a screenshot of a DM thread between her and Brooke, captioned, Should I invite him? Might stir things up, smiling face with horns. Marcy didn't even try to editorialize. She just let the evidence speak. Brooke was staging something. A performance. She wanted the optics, hot birthday girl, successful friends, maybe a spark of jealousy thrown at my feet like bait. A power play disguised as a party. But what she didn't realize, what she couldn't possibly comprehend, was that I had been planning too. Just not a party. Not something loud. Something lasting. While she chased the dopamine drip of shallow applause, I was putting the final pieces in place. Logistics, done. Files, backed up. Emotional loose ends, tied and snipped. My mask, fully secured. I smiled when she gushed about her vision board, complimented her on the color scheme, asked if she needed help moving furniture for the DJ booth. She beamed, thought she was winning, because Brooke never noticed when someone was holding the door open, or when they were already halfway out. What she mistook for permission was just me handing her the rope, and the night she finally tugged it, thinking she'd pull the crowd in, she'd feel the drop instead. The night before the party, the house was quiet. Too quiet, almost cinematic. Brooke was upstairs in the guest room she'd started sleeping in, claimed she needed better neck support, though I suspected it was just more space to scroll through Instagram without me glancing over her shoulder. I sat in the den with a drink I didn't need. Not nervous. Not excited. Just ready. Everything was in motion. All the pieces aligned. It was the strange calm that settles in before a storm you invited. That's when the message came. 9:42 p.m. From Marcy. A voice note. Not a text. Not an emoji reaction. A voice note. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before pressing play. Her voice came through low and steady, like she knew the weight of the words before she even said them. Hey, she said. Just that. A breath. Then, whatever happens tomorrow, just know I see you. I respect you. And I'd stand next to you any day. A pause. A soft exhale. And then the message ended. I didn't move. Didn't blink. Just sat there holding the phone like it was some rare, delicate thing. Because here's the thing. Marcy doesn't say stuff like that. She's not a heart-on-her-sleeve type. She's sarcastic, guarded, observant to a fault. The kind of woman who uses drywit like armor and avoids sentiment like it's contagious. So that message? That was loud. In her language, that was a scream. I played it again. Slower this time. Listening to the cadence, the weight, the breath that caught halfway through the word, respect. It didn't feel romantic, not exactly. But it wasn't neutral, either. It lived in that charged middle space where everything unspoken hums just below the surface. She saw me. In a house where I'd been invisible for a year, where my presence was either ignored or mocked, that message was an anchor. Not for pity. Not for validation. For truth. Someone had watched. Had cared. Had understood. And not just anyone. Her. The woman who Brooke paraded like a pet, assuming she'd always be the loyal sidekick. The woman who, unbeknownst to her, had long since stepped off the stage Brooke thought she controlled. I saved the message. Not for drama. Not as evidence. Just for me. Because tomorrow would be loud. It would be bright, chaotic, and laced with the kind of faux glamour Brooke lived for. But tonight? Tonight was mine. And the quiet, steady voice of the one person who'd seen it all, that was the only sound I needed. I smiled. Not a big grin. Not a victorious smirk. Just a small, private smile. The kind you make when a long plan is coming together. When your soul finally feels seen. When you realize you won't be walking out of this alone. By the time the second charcuterie board collapsed under the weight of 36 Instagrammable cubes of manchego and fig jam, the backyard was already buzzing like a live wire. Brooke had outdone herself again. The tent was lit with soft golden string lights that gave every overpriced cocktail the illusion of glow. The DJ booth throbbed with a curated playlist she'd micromanaged for weeks. Confident, seductive, a little smug, just like her. There were at least 70 people, all drifting between the drink station, the dance floor, and the photo moment area where Brooke had set up a backdrop that read, in 6-foot cursive neon. Still unapologetic. That was her mood for the night. Brash. Loud. Queen bee in stilettos. She wore a champagne-colored dress that clung in all the places she'd recently had sculpted, complete with the fresh lip filler she claimed was just a hydrating gloss. And God, she was working the room. She laughed too loud at stories she wasn't listening to. She made 3 rounds before she even looked in my direction, and when she did, it was to introduce me as the guy who funded all this fabulousness. People laughed. I smiled. I wasn't drinking much. Just enough to keep a glass in my hand and my timing sharp. I didn't need a buzz. I needed clarity. Marcy arrived fashionably late. Simple black dress. No drama. No glitter. Just presence. Our eyes met across the patio. No nod. No wave. Just acknowledgement. Static. A signal with no interference. Brooke made her rounds. Hugged a yoga instructor like they were long-lost war buddies. Giggled with Travis, the ex, whose presence she explained away by saying, "Oh please, it's 2025. Grow up." I grew up. That wasn't the problem. The real issue was she hadn't noticed the stage was already set. And not by her. Then, as expected, it happened. Midway through the second set, just after the empowerment toast her friend Karen gave about women who age like scandal, Brooke strutted up to the mic. She'd been waiting for this moment like a kid waiting to open their birthday gifts in front of the entire class. She raised her hand, silenced the DJ, and took a dramatic pause. The crowd leaned in, phones out, some already recording. She grinned. "Before the night gets too wild," she purred, "I just want to thank you all for being here. I mean, let's be honest, this man right here," she gestured vaguely toward me, "he doesn't deserve me." Laughter. Louder than before. Some clapped. Someone shouted, "Facts." The DJ cued a drum roll. She laughed like it was the best bit she'd ever written. And that's when I stood up. But not like before. Not frozen. Not shrinking. I walked forward, slow, deliberate. My glass raised, the lights catching the amber liquid just enough to reflect in her pupils when I stopped in front of her. She blinked. Still smiling, but now unsure if it was a game. "You're right," I said. And I let the words hang. Just a beat longer than comfortable. She laughed, one of those unsure, shaky laughs that sounds too close to a hiccup. The room shifted. The laughter quieted, not stopped, just frayed at the edges. I didn't break eye contact. This wasn't a joke. Not anymore. I could see her starting to calculate, trying to regain footing. But the heels were a little too high now. The spotlight a little too hot. I lowered my glass. And then I did something Brooke never expected. I stepped up, not out of frame, not into the shadows, into the center. Because this party? This wasn't for her anymore. This was act one of something entirely different. And the audience? They were about to get a show they'd never forget. The mic was still in Brooke's hand when I reached her. Her smile had stiffened into something more plastic, her eyes flicking between me and the crowd like she'd lost her place in the script. She tried to pass it off like a bit, chuckling, "He's really committing, huh?" and half extending the mic toward me like a sword she assumed I'd lay down and bow beneath. But I didn't bow. I took the mic, gently, like I was accepting something delicate, fragile, almost as fragile as the control she thought she still had. I turned to face the crowd, feeling the weight of 70 pairs of eyes. Phones lowered, drinks halfway to lips. The DJ caught mid-track, letting the music fizzle under the tension. "Brooke," I said, calmly, "you're absolutely right. I don't deserve you." A few guests chuckled nervously, expecting another punchline. But my tone didn't shift. I didn't smirk. I didn't blink. I don't deserve someone who weaponizes attention, who performs cruelty like it's cabaret, who humiliates the people closest to her for applause. Now it was quiet. Dead quiet. You could hear the fizz of the Prosecco on the dessert table. I scanned the room, slowly, then turned back toward Brooke. She looked frozen, still smiling, but her eyes were screaming, "Abort. Abort." "But maybe," I continued, "just maybe, I do deserve someone who listens, who respects, who doesn't treat kindness like it's a punchline." And then, I turned, toward Marcy. She hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, but her face, God, her face, was a mix of disbelief and something deeper, something raw. Like someone realizing the page had finally turned in a story they thought would stay stuck forever. I walked toward her. Steady. Measured. The crowd turned too, like one slow wave of stunned silence following a shifting tide. I stopped in front of her. Reached out. Took her hand. She didn't resist. She didn't speak. She knew. And then, without theatrics, without hesitation, I leaned in and kissed her. Not a movie kiss. Not a sloppy, passion-fueled crash. Just a slow, deliberate kiss. Certain. Unapologetic. A declaration. And in that moment, everything fractured. Someone gasped. Another dropped a glass. But it was Brooks that shattered. I heard it behind me, the brittle snap of stemware meeting tile, followed by the sharp inhale of a woman who'd finally, truly, realized she was not the star of the show anymore. I didn't turn around. I kept holding Marcy's hand. Her thumb brushed mine barely, but it was enough. And the only thing I heard, before the music cut back in, awkward and too late, was a single stunned voice from the back of the crowd. Holy sh*T. They weren't ready, but I was. And Brooke? She had spent months crafting her fantasy stage. She just never imagined someone else would steal the finale. The silence after the kiss stretched longer than it should have. Long enough to feel like it might swallow the whole backyard. The music had cut back in, but it sounded tinny now, hollow, misplaced. Like someone had hit shuffle on a party that was already over. I still held Marcy's hand. Her fingers were steady, warm, real. I turned back toward the mic, still centered in the chaos Brooke had orchestrated. She was standing exactly where I'd left her, one heel slightly off balance on the patio paver, glass shards glinting near her feet like confetti from a bomb no one saw coming. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I picked up the mic. The crowd hadn't moved. No one laughed. No one whispered. It was that rare, raw kind of silence where even phones stay down. The moment too dense to capture. I've already spoken to a lawyer, I said, calm as ever. No shouting. No venom. Just facts. Measured. Surgical. The documents are filed. It's clean. It's done. The house goes on the market next month. Accounts are split. You get the spotlight. I turned slightly, eyes locking on hers one last time. And I get peace. Brooke's face, still frozen, didn't change. But the tears in her eyes weren't dramatic. They weren't performative. They just sat there, stubborn, undignified. That part, finally, was real. I turned to Marcy. She hadn't let go. Ready to leave? I asked. She didn't hesitate. Yeah, she said. Just that. Soft. Firm. We walked. Slowly. Past rows of stunned faces. Past half-eaten cupcakes and untouched bottles of Prosecco. Past people who had once laughed at her jokes about me, now unsure where they were supposed to look. No one stopped us. No one dared. Brooke didn't move. Not a step. Her throne had turned into a witness stand. As we reached the gate, the DJ, either oblivious or just desperate to fill the air, started playing something upbeat. Dancey. Loud. But no one danced. No one clapped. No one followed. Behind us, the lights still glowed. The music still pulsed. But the party was over. Because everyone had seen it. The power shift. The truth. The calm man who didn't shout. Who didn't crack. Who just quietly ended the show with precision. Brooke had spent months painting me as boring. Predictable. But there's nothing more unpredictable than the man who stopped trying. And nothing more powerful. Then the moment he walks away. I was scraping burnt eggs off the pan when I noticed it. Her bare left hand. No ring. No indentation where it should have been. Just smooth, pale skin as if it had never been there at all. A slow chill settled in my gut. Lisa had always been meticulous. She never took off her ring, not when she cooked, not when she showered, not even when she gardened, despite my constant nagging that she'd lose it in the soil one day. But now, it was gone. I forced myself to stay calm. Maybe she'd taken it off for her latest round of tests. Maybe she'd lost weight from all the treatments, and it was slipping off her finger. Maybe, God help me, maybe I was just being paranoid. But then she turned, caught me staring, and did something that sent a bolt of ice through my spine. She smiled. A careful, rehearsed kind of smile. And then she tucked her hand into her sleeve, out of sight. I set my coffee down with slow, deliberate control. Where's your ring? Her expression didn't flicker. At the jeweler's. One of the prongs was loose. A lie. I knew every jeweler in town. Hell, I was the one who took her bracelet in when the class broke last year. And no one, absolutely no one, would have let her leave without a temporary replacement. I didn't press. Not yet. Because now, I was watching. By the time she left for her doctor's appointment, I was already halfway to my car, throwing on my jacket as I went. I had no idea what I was looking for, but my gut had never been wrong before. And today, it was screaming. Lisa's clinic was a private one, pristine white walls, polished floors, hushed conversations behind sleek glass partitions. Normally, I'd sit in the waiting area while she had her checkups. But this time, I walked past reception, pretending I knew exactly where I was going. The nurses were busy. Too busy to notice a middle-aged man in a worn-out leather jacket skimming through the files left carelessly on the counter. And that's when I saw it. A prescription slip, half tucked under a folder. Lisa's name was on it. But the diagnosis, my throat tightened, was one I'd never seen before. A rare autoimmune disorder. Something she'd never mentioned. Something no doctor had ever discussed with me. My fingers tightened around the paper as I read the signature at the bottom. Not her usual doctor. Not the specialist who had been handling her case for months. No, the name scrawled there belonged to someone else. Dr. Ryan Harper. A name I'd never heard before. A name I would soon learn belonged to the man Lisa had already chosen to replace me. I sat in my car outside the clinic, gripping the prescription slip so tightly that the paper wrinkled under my fingers. The inked signature of Dr. Ryan Harper burned into my vision like a brand. My mind ran through every possibility, every reasonable explanation, but each one collapsed under the weight of cold, simple logic. Lisa had never mentioned a Dr. Harper. Never once. And that diagnosis, so rare, so conveniently timed, so completely absent from her prior medical history? Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. I drove home in a fog. Every mile, every passing streetlight, my pulse drummed in my ears like war drums. My wife, the woman I had sacrificed everything for, was keeping secrets. I just didn't know how deep the betrayal ran, but I was about to find out. Lisa had left her laptop open on the dining room table. A careless mistake, one she never would have made if she thought I had any reason to be suspicious. I sat down, hands steady but my mind boiling, and opened her cloud storage. Password protected. Of course. Lisa had always used variations of the same 3 passwords: our anniversary, her childhood dog's name, and her mother's birth year. I tried the anniversary. No luck. I tried the dog's name. Still nothing. Then I paused. A week ago, she had a new necklace. A thin, gold chain with a tiny charm, barely noticeable. I'd asked what it was, and she had smiled that same fake smile she gave me this morning. Oh, just something personal, she had said lightly, fingers brushing the pendant before she changed the subject. Personal enough to use as a password? I typed it in. The screen blinked. And then, I was in. Folders appeared in neat rows. Receipts, work documents, photos. And then, a hidden folder, titled Only Archive. My throat tightened as I clicked it open. Inside were hundreds of emails, messages, and documents. I started scrolling, scanning until my breath caught in my throat. An email thread between Lisa and her father. I clicked, and what I read made my blood run cold. Lisa. M. Paid for the procedure. He sold the house. Took out loans. Everything went according to plan. Dr. Harper. Good. Once the final payment clears, there's nothing left tying you to him. Lisa. What if he starts asking questions? Dr. Harper. He won't. He's too naive to understand the diagnosis was fabricated. By the time he does, it won't matter. Lisa. And Ryan? Dr. Harper. He's ready. After the operation, you'll be free. Mark will be ruined, and you can finally come home. My stomach twisted into knots. Ruined. They had planned this. They had set me up. And Lisa, the woman I loved, the woman I would have died for, had called me too naive to see the truth. I gripped the edge of the table, forcing myself to stay calm. My vision blurred with pure, seething rage. But anger wouldn't fix this. Revenge would. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I worked. I had spent my entire life playing fair, doing things the right way. But I had been a fool. A stupid, gullible fool who thought love meant trust. Not anymore. If they wanted to scam me out of everything I had, If they wanted to leave me penniless and broken, then I would burn their entire plan to the ground. I opened a blank document, and then, methodically, precisely, I began typing. A letter. From the insurance company. A carefully worded, official-looking document stating that due to recent audits, they had flagged discrepancies in Lisa Harper's medical records. That the procedure may have been performed under fraudulent circumstances. That pending further investigation, a full reimbursement was in process, meaning that the money I had paid was coming back. The money Dr. Harper and Ryan Harper were expecting to pocket. I printed it, aged the paper to make it look like a corporate letter, and sealed it in an official-looking envelope. Tomorrow, I would make sure it found its way into the right hands. And then, I would watch everything they built crumble around them. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I didn't even bother making coffee. My entire body was running on something darker, something sharper. I was past anger, past betrayal. Now, I was hunting. Lisa had an appointment that afternoon, and I knew exactly where she would be. The clinic. The same pristine, polished place where she and her new husband had faked her illness and drained me dry. I waited until I saw her walk into the consultation room, then I moved. There was only one person who might talk, Sarah. She had been Lisa's primary nurse for months. Always polite, always professional, but I had seen the way she looked at me when I came to pick Lisa up. The hesitation. The almost sympathy. Like she knew something she wasn't allowed to say. I found her near the supply closet, stocking latex gloves. Hey, Sarah. My voice was calm. Steady. She turned, startled, clutching a clipboard to her chest. Oh, Mr. Harper. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. I need your help. Her throat bobbed. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, screen open to Lisa's messages with her father. The color drained from her face. I watched the muscles in her jaw tighten. She already knew, didn't she? They faked it, didn't they? My voice was quiet, cold. Lisa was never sick. Sarah inhaled sharply, her fingers tightening around the clipboard. She darted a glance down the hall, as if making sure no one was listening, then stepped closer. They switched her results, she whispered. Lisa's original tests were completely normal. The world slowed. I had expected it. I knew it. But hearing it, hearing it confirmed, was something else entirely. I forced my expression to stay neutral. And the new tests? Forged. Ryan arranged everything. He even faked the imaging scans. Her voice shook, but not with guilt. With fear. I narrowed my eyes. Why are you telling me this? Sarah's fingers dug into the clipboard. Her gaze flickered down the hall again. Because I'm done being scared. She swallowed. Ryan threatened me. He said if I ever talked, I'd lose my job. That he'd blacklist me from every hospital in the state. But she exhaled sharply, voice trembling. I can't let them get away with this. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a small flash drive, and pressed it into my palm. My fingers closed around it. I looked at her, really looked at her. And in her wide, fearful eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. A crack in their armor. They think they've won. My voice was quiet. Sarah hesitated. Then, slowly, she nodded. Then let's prove them wrong. I sat in my car outside the medical board's headquarters, the engine still running. In my hand was the flash drive Sarah had given me, along with copies of Lisa's real test results, printed, stapled, and neatly enclosed in an envelope. This was it. I stepped out of the car, my grip tightening on the evidence. My legs felt steady, my heartbeat calm. They had taken everything from me, my savings, my home, my trust. Now, I was taking everything from them. The receptionist barely glanced up as I slid the envelope across the counter. I need this reviewed immediately. My voice was level, controlled. It concerns medical fraud and patient endangerment. She opened her mouth to ask a question, probably to tell me they don't take walk-ins. But then her eyes flicked down to the letterhead, the official-looking documents, the cold finality in my expression. She took the envelope without another word. I turned and walked out. By noon, it had begun. I sat at my kitchen table, sipping coffee, when my phone rang. Lisa. I let it ring twice before answering. Mark, she hissed the moment I picked up. No pleasantries. No fake sweetness. Just pure, unfiltered rage. You ruined everything. I leaned back, letting a slow smile pull at the corner of my mouth. Good afternoon to you too, darling. She ignored me. They've suspended my father, Ryan too. The medical board is investigating all our records. Do you have any idea what you've done? I don't know. I mused, stirring my coffee. Maybe just exposed a little bit of organized fraud and criminal malpractice. She let out a shaky breath. You don't understand. My father can fix this. He can still make it right. Oh, I think we're past that. There was a long silence. Then, voice low and desperate, she whispered, Mark, if you stop this, I'll come back. We can. I laughed. Actually laughed. She stopped mid-sentence. You still think I want you back? I said, my voice thick with amusement. Lisa, I wouldn't take you back if you came gift-wrapped with a check for all the money you stole from me. Her breath hitched. You bastard. I sipped my coffee again. See you in court, sweetheart. And then I hung up. That night, I was expecting a storm. It came in the form of Dr. Ryan Harper kicking open my front door. The second I heard the splintering wood, I knew he was unhinged. His breath was ragged, his white coat was gone, and his hands, his surgeon's hands, were shaking. Where is it? He spat, storming into my living room. I raised an eyebrow. You'll have to be more specific. He grabbed the front of my shirt and slammed me against the wall. The money. The refund. You son of a b********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************* the funds from Lisa's surgery. His pupils were wild, his face red. Do you have any idea what you've done? I smiled, slow and deliberate. I'd say I've done a pretty fantastic job so far. He snapped. He threw me back against the table, knocking over a lamp. He was breathing too hard, too fast, his rage uncontrollable. Give me the money, he seethed, or I will ruin you. I will end you. And that's when I glanced, just briefly, toward the bookshelf, where my recorder sat blinking, catching every single word. I turned back to him, wiping a trickle of blood from my lip. Say that again, I murmured, voice dripping with amusement. He blinked, his rage flickering with confusion. Go on, I said, straightening. Tell me exactly how you're going to end me. I'd love to hear it. He hesitated. For the first time, he hesitated. And that's when he knew. His gaze darted to the shelf, to the tiny, blinking red light. Checkmate. I sat in my living room, staring at the recorder, listening to his words over and over again. The threats, the fury, the desperation when he realized he'd been caught. Give me the money, or I will end you. I let the words settle into my bones, let them burn away whatever remnants of doubt or hesitation I had left. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about justice. It was about revenge. At sunrise, I drove straight to the police station. Detective Caldwell was a grizzled, no-nonsense type, the kind of guy who looked like he'd seen it all and didn't have the patience for anything less than hard evidence. I handed him the recorder, pressed play, and watched as his expression shifted from boredom to intrigue to something much sharper. By the time the recording ended, his jaw was tight. That enough for an arrest? I asked, voice flat. He exhaled through his nose, considering. Threats, breaking and entering, potential extortion. Yeah, we can work with this. He pushed back his chair, already reaching for the phone on his desk. We'll pick him up today. I stood, the weight in my chest finally lifting. Ryan was done, but I wasn't finished. Not yet. Lisa showed up at my house that afternoon. Her knock was frantic, almost desperate. I let her in, watching as she paced my living room in agitation. She had that same fake composure I'd seen before, but now it was fraying at the edges. You need to stop this, she said, voice trembling. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Ryan's in custody. It's a little late for that. Her eyes flashed with something: fear? Anger? Regret? I wasn't sure, and I didn't care. My father will fix everything, she whispered. He always does. I laughed. A deep, humorless laugh. "Oh, sweetheart," I murmured. "Your father's next." Lisa paled. "No, you don't understand it. No, you don't understand." I took a step closer, voice dropping. "I know everything. I know the surgery was fake. I know the insurance fraud was planned. And I know your father has a hell of a lot more to lose than Ryan ever did." Her lips parted, but no words came out. She was realizing, finally realizing, that I wasn't the naive, devoted husband she had spent years manipulating. I was the man who was about to burn everything she had ever known to the ground. And then, as if fate itself wanted to drive the final nail into her coffin, my phone buzzed. An email. From an anonymous source. Subject: Harper's Financials. My stomach coiled with anticipation as I opened the attachment. And there it was. Account statements. Deposits. Wire transfers. Over $500,000. All from pharmaceutical companies. All linked directly to Dr. Thomas Harper. Lisa saw the look on my face and stepped forward. "Mark, please." I turned the screen toward her. She froze. And in that moment, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long, long time. Fear. Not fear for me. Not fear for Ryan. Fear for herself. I smiled. Checkmate. I spent the next several hours combing through the documents. Transaction logs. Bank statements. Even internal emails that had somehow found their way into my inbox. Whoever had sent me this information wanted Harper to go down just as badly as I did. And the deeper I dug, the worse it got. This wasn't just about me. This wasn't just about Lisa. Harper had perfected this scam for decades. He targeted wealthy, desperate spouses, found patients with minor conditions, ones that could be twisted into something dire. He fabricated diagnoses, convinced families their loved ones were at imminent risk, and then funneled them into costly, unnecessary treatments. Lisa was never special. She was just another test subject, another puppet in her father's long con. The weight of it settled over me like a lead blanket. My betrayal, my losses, they weren't unique. Harper had done this to hundreds before me, and they had no idea. Until now. The first call came the next morning. A woman, elderly, voice shaking. "You don't know me, but I saw your name on the news," she said. "About the doctor. About Harper." She swallowed. "He treated my husband 5 years ago. Said he needed an experimental drug regimen. Said it was our only option." A pause. "My husband died 3 months later. The insurance company wouldn't cover the treatment. We lost everything." My grip tightened on the phone. "Did you ever see his original test results?" A heavy silence. Then, a broken whisper. "No." More calls followed. A tidal wave of them. A father who had taken out a second mortgage to pay for his daughter's life-saving treatments. Treatments she never needed. A retired teacher who had spent her pension on prescriptions Harper had sworn were vital, only to learn later they were nothing more than sugar pills. Story after story. Victim after victim, and all of them led back to him. Harper, a man who had built his entire empire on suffering, a man who had destroyed lives and walked away richer for it. I sat in my office, surrounded by files, testimonies, and medical records. My chest was tight, not with anger, not anymore. With purpose. It wasn't enough to expose him. It wasn't enough to bring him down in court. People needed to know. I spent the next 2 days building a website. The homepage was simple. Black text on a white background. The Harper Files, a medical fraud investigation. Then, in bold, Dr. Thomas Harper spent 30 years profiting off fabricated illnesses. These are the stories of his victims. One by one, I uploaded everything. The financial records. The altered prescriptions. The emails detailing his step-by-step process for manipulating families. And then, the final nail in his coffin. A list of every patient he had ever diagnosed. A database where anyone could type in a name, a date, a treatment, and see for themselves if they, too, had been part of the scam. I sat back, staring at the screen. The truth was out. And this time, no amount of money could bury it. She showed up at my door at midnight. No call, no warning. Just a knock, soft, hesitant. The kind that belonged to a woman who knew she wasn't welcome. I didn't answer right away. I let her stand out there, shifting from foot to foot, until she knocked again, harder this time. "Mark," she called through the door. "Please." Something in her voice almost sounded real. Almost. I opened the door, leaning against the frame, arms crossed. Lisa stood there in the dim porch light, her face pale, hair tangled like she'd been running her hands through it for hours. "I need to talk to you," she whispered. I tilted my head. "Strange. Last time we talked, you were too busy screaming at me about how I ruined everything." She flinched. I know. But, Mark, you have to understand it." I stepped aside, motioning her in. Not because I believed a damn word she was about to say, but because I had something for her. Something she needed to hear. She hesitated, then walked past me, arms wrapped around herself. I shut the door behind her. "Let me guess," I said, strolling past her into the living room. "Ryan's in jail, your father's career is circling the drain, and now that the walls are caving in, you want to crawl back?" She shook her head furiously. "It's not like that." I sat down in my chair, gesturing for her to continue. "Go on, then. Enlighten me." She exhaled shakily, stepping closer. "Mark, everything I did. I had to. My father made me." I barked out a laugh. The audacity. "Your father made you?" I repeated, my voice dripping in mockery. "He forced you to lie to me? To fake an illness? To steal from me? He held a gun to your head and made you run off with Ryan?" Her eyes welled up. "You don't understand what it's like to be his daughter." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "You're right," I murmured. "I don't." And then I picked up my phone, tapped the screen, and let her own voice fill the room. Laughter. Her laughter. Followed by her own words. "Mark? He's my personal ATM. My idiot little bank account. And he doesn't even know it." Lisa froze. Her breath hitched. Her own betrayal was playing back to her in real time. "He's so gullible, Dad. He thinks he's saving my life. Can you believe that?" She collapsed into the chair across from me, burying her face in her hands. "Mark, please, please." I shut off the recording. "Tell me," I said coolly, "where exactly did your father force you to say that?" Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. I waited. Then, slowly, her hands lowered. And for the first time, I saw it. Not guilt. Not shame. Defeat. She knew. There was no coming back from this. I stood up, towering over her. "You used me, Lisa." My voice was calm. Too calm. "You made me bankrupt myself, made me sell my house, made me believe you were dying for what?" Tears streaked her face. I didn't know it would go this far." I smiled. Sharp. Cruel. Cold. "You're a terrible liar." Her breath shuddered. "Mark, is there anything I can do?" "Anything." I pulled out her phone. Her old phone. The one she left behind when she ran off with Ryan. The one I had unlocked 3 hours ago. And then, without a word, I tossed it onto the table in front of her. Lisa blinked in confusion. Then she picked it up, swiping at the screen. And I watched the blood drain from her face. Hundreds of files. Scans. Prescriptions. A detailed list of every fake diagnosis her father had ever assigned. I leaned down until my face was inches from hers. "You were more than his puppet, Lisa." My voice dropped into a whisper. "You were his accomplice." Her lips parted. For once in her life, she had nothing to say. The headlines hit like a wrecking ball. Dr. Thomas Harper stripped of medical license amid fraud scandal. Former surgeon accused of decades-long medical scam. Victims speak out. He destroyed our lives. It was everywhere. The board's ruling had been swift. Unanimous. Harper was finished. No more fabricated illnesses. No more kickbacks from pharmaceutical companies. No more preying on desperate families. And yet, as I watched the news coverage, I felt nothing. Not triumph. Not satisfaction. Just emptiness. Harper would never practice medicine again, but he wasn't in jail. Not yet. That was coming, and it would come soon. Because his golden boy was ready to talk. Ryan Harper looked like hell. Gone was the arrogance. Gone was the smug, entitled surgeon who had stormed into my house, demanding money and threatening my life. Now, he was just a broken man in an orange jumpsuit, sitting across from me in a police interrogation room. His hands were shackled to the table. His face was gaunt, and when he spoke, his voice cracked. "You think I did this willingly?" His laugh was bitter. "Hollow. You think I wanted any of this?" I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. "Enlighten me." He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his disheveled hair. I got in too deep. By the time I wanted out, Ryan swallowed. He threatened my daughter. That got my attention. My fingers curled into fists under the table. "What?" Ryan's gaze met mine, raw with something I hadn't expected: fear. Real fear. I told him I wanted to walk away, that I didn't want to be a part of his scams anymore. His voice wavered. He said if I left, if I ever turned on him, I'd never see my daughter again. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. And for the first time since this all started, I felt tired. Not angry. Not vengeful. Just bone-deep exhausted. Ryan was a scumbag. He had played his part. He had destroyed lives for money. He had used Lisa to secure his place in Harper's empire. But he was also a father. And Harper had played him too. "What do you want from me?" I asked quietly. Ryan swallowed hard. "I want him to pay." His voice shook. "I'll testify. I'll give the DA everything I have. Just make sure he doesn't walk away from this." I studied him for a long time. Then I nodded. "Good," I said, "because I won't stop until he does." Lisa lost everything in the fallout. Her father's assets were frozen. His bank accounts seized. His network of connections dried up overnight. And without his money, her world collapsed. The luxury car? Gone. The shopping sprees? Gone. The high-rise apartment she bought with my money? I made sure that was gone too. Lisa fought it. She tried everything: legal appeals, emotional manipulation, even calling me in some last-ditch, tearful attempt to reason with me. "Mark, please. I have nowhere to go," she sobbed. I stared at the paperwork in front of me. The deed to her condo. The one I had paid for. "You never had a problem leaving me with nothing," I said, voice calm. "Why should I be any different?" "Please," she whispered. "Please don't do this." I smiled, slow and cold. "Oh, sweetheart. I already did." And then I hung up. The next day, the paperwork was finalized. Lisa's former apartment, the one she had so proudly decorated, the one she had turned into a love nest for herself and Ryan, now belonged to a victims fund. A place for people like me. People who had been robbed blind by Harper. People who had lost everything because of his greed. I signed the last document, set down the pen, and exhaled. Lisa and her father were out of moves. And for the first time in a long time, I finally felt free. I never thought I'd go back to teaching. Not after everything. The betrayal. The lawsuits. The months spent digging through Harper's empire of lies, watching it all crumble under the weight of the truth. But here I was, standing in front of a classroom again, chalk in hand, the familiar hum of students settling into their seats filling the air. For the first time in years, I felt like myself. No courtrooms. No bank statements. No lies. Just history. Real history. Not the kind people fabricate for profit. Not the kind men like Harper rewrite to serve their own interests. The kind that mattered. It was my last lecture before the holiday break when my students surprised me. I had just finished wiping the board when a few of them shuffled to the front of the classroom, clutching a package wrapped in brown paper. We all chipped in. One of them, Emily, bright-eyed and always ready with a question, said shyly, "It's just a little something." I frowned, taking the package carefully. "You didn't have to." "We did," she interrupted, smiling. "Open it." I pulled at the paper, and a hardcover book slipped into my hands. The History of Corruption and Those Who Fought It. I ran my fingers over the embossed title, my throat tightening. Inside, scrawled across the first page in neat, bold letters, was a simple message. To our favorite teacher. Our hero. I stared at it for a long time, swallowing the sudden lump in my throat. After everything, after losing so much, I had thought I'd never find purpose again. But these kids, they saw me as something more than a man who had been used, discarded, and broken. They saw me as someone who fought back. Who won? I closed the book gently, exhaling. Thank you. Emily grinned. You always tell us that history repeats itself, right? She tapped the cover. Guess you're proof it doesn't have to. I was still holding the book when she showed up. Lisa. She stood outside my classroom, arms crossed, looking nothing like the woman I used to know. The designer clothes were gone. The carefully styled hair now dull and lifeless. The arrogance, the sharp, biting confidence that had once made her so damn untouchable had vanished. All that remained was a hollowed-out version of the woman I once loved. I didn't invite her in, didn't offer her a chair, just stood in the doorway, watching her shift uncomfortably under my silence. I'm not here to fight, she said softly. I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. Then why are you here? She licked her lips. I can fix this. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Fix what, exactly? I gestured vaguely between us. The millions your father stole? The lives he destroyed? The fact that you used me like an ATM and laughed about it. She winced. I didn't mean that. You did, I said simply. And you still would, if things had gone your way. Her lip trembled. Mark, please. I lost everything. I tilted my head. And you think that's my problem? I can make it up to you, she whispered. I stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, I stepped back into the classroom, picked up the book my students had given me, and held it out to her. She hesitated before taking it. Her eyes flicked over the title. Her brow furrowed slightly, then froze. Because there, on the table of contents, was a chapter title that made her breath hitch. The Harper Scandal, a case study in medical fraud. She looked up at me, her face crumbling. I smiled, a small, quiet thing. Your history now, Lisa. And then I walked away. Harper wasn't done fighting. Men like him never are. Even stripped of his medical license, drowning in lawsuits, and with Ryan's testimony sealing his fate, he still believed he could control the narrative. So he did what all disgraced men do when the world turns against them. He wrote a book. It was called Betrayed by My Own, The Truth Behind the Harper Scandal. A self-aggrandizing pile of garbage where he painted himself as the victim. A brilliant, misunderstood doctor who had been sabotaged by jealous colleagues and targeted by a bitter ex-son-in-law. I read the leaked manuscript online. He never once acknowledged the patients he'd defrauded. Never once admitted that he had destroyed families, stolen their savings, and sentenced some of them to death with his unnecessary procedures. No, to Harper, he was the real martyr. But the world wasn't buying it. The public outrage was still fresh, the wounds he had inflicted still raw. By the time his publisher caught wind of the backlash, the contract was gone, ripped to shreds. No book, no redemption tour, no comeback, just silence. Lisa didn't get silence. She got something much worse. I had heard the rumors, but I didn't believe them until I saw it for myself. It was a Tuesday evening when I stopped at the grocery store after work. A mundane errand, just grabbing a few things before heading home. And then, as I walked past the checkout lanes, I saw her. Lisa, bagging groceries. She looked small, smaller than I remembered. Shoulders hunched, hands moving mechanically as she stuffed cans and cereal boxes into plastic bags. The woman who had once paraded around in designer heels, who used my money to buy silk sheets and first-class tickets. Now wearing a cheap uniform, scanning barcodes for a life she never thought she'd have to live. And it was then, right at that moment, that I noticed something even more brutal. A young guy at the self-checkout lane was holding up his phone, taking a picture. Lisa didn't see him, but the internet would. The meme blew up overnight. A blurry, low-quality shot of Lisa standing behind the register, her name tag slightly askew, a tired look on her face. And the caption? Lies don't cure diseases. It was everywhere. People recognized her. The woman who had been at the center of one of the biggest medical fraud scandals in recent history. The woman who had faked her own illness. The internet had no mercy. Comment sections roasted her. News outlets picked up the story. Even former victims of Harper's scam shared it, calling it karma. Lisa was humiliated. And the worst part? There was nothing she could do. I didn't go there to gloat. I don't know why I went back at all. Maybe curiosity, maybe closure. But a week later, I found myself walking through that grocery store again, and this time, I wasn't the one who saw her first. She saw me. Our eyes met as she was handing change to a customer, and for a second, I saw a flicker of the old Lisa. Not the manipulative liar. Not the woman who had betrayed me. Just someone who had nothing left. Her hands trembled slightly as she dropped the coins into the customer's palm. Then she turned away, and I turned too, ready to leave. But just as I reached the exit, a voice stopped me. Soft. Older. Excuse me. I turned to see an elderly woman standing there, clutching a newspaper in her hands. I glanced down and saw the front page. Dr. Devil behind bars. Harper faces maximum sentence in medical fraud case. The woman smiled gently. I just wanted to say, thank you. I frowned. For what? She tapped the headline. I was one of his patients. I almost lost my home because of him. Her voice wavered, but her eyes stayed strong. But because of you, he won't hurt anyone else. I stared at her for a long moment. Then, finally, I nodded. And for the first time since this all began, since my world collapsed, since my wife sold me out, since I thought my life was over, I finally felt at peace. The letter arrived in a plain, unmarked envelope. No return address. Just my name, written in a shaky, almost unfamiliar script. I almost didn't open it. After everything, I had nothing left to say to Lisa. But something about the weight of it, the way the envelope wasn't flat, the way it held something more than just paper, made my fingers work faster than my thoughts. I tore it open, a single sheet of paper, and below it, something cold and metallic tumbled into my palm. A key. My breath hitched. I knew this key. It was to our house, the one I had sold, the one I had signed away to pay for the surgery that never happened. I forced my eyes to the letter. Lisa's handwriting was uneven, like she had written it in a hurry. Mark, I know I don't deserve this, but I need you to understand, I was a pawn. He controlled everything. I thought I could leave, but I never could. I lost everything. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know one thing. I never stopped loving you. I'm sorry. No signature. Just those words. I stared at the letter, my pulse dull and heavy. Lisa, always a liar. Always twisting reality to fit her needs. But this felt different. This felt final. I found out the truth that evening. I had gone to grab my mail when my old neighbor, Mrs. Ellison, stepped out onto her porch. She was pushing 80, but still sharp as a blade, eyes always watching, always knowing. She spotted me and hesitated. Then, softly, like she had been waiting to say it, she murmured, "Did you hear?" I frowned. Hear what? Her lips pressed together. Lisa's dead. The words didn't hit me at first. They just floated there, hollow. And then they sank. What? My voice sounded distant, like it didn't belong to me. Mrs. Ellison sighed, shifting on her cane. She overdosed 2 nights ago. In a motel. Someone found her yesterday morning. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. My hands went numb. I'm sorry, she added gently. I barely heard her, because suddenly I was gripping the key so tight, the metal bit into my skin. The house was empty when I got there. Dust covered the floor. The air was stale, thick with the scent of a place long abandoned. I hadn't stepped foot inside since the day I sold it. Yet here I was, standing in the doorway, holding a key from a woman who no longer existed. My fingers twitched at my sides. I should have walked away. Should have tossed the key into the gutter and never looked back. Instead, I stepped inside. Something was waiting for me. I didn't know how I knew it. I just did. I moved through the rooms, past furniture covered in white sheets, past memories I had buried long ago. And then, in the bedroom, I saw it. A small leather-bound book, sitting on the windowsill. Lisa's diary. My chest tightened as I reached for it. The pages were brittle, ink smudged in places, like she had written in a hurry. I flipped through them, past entries filled with names, dates, things I didn't care about, until I saw my name. And then, below it, something that made my breath stop cold. I never loved Ryan. I never loved any of them. It was always Mark. It was always him. But my father, he made sure I could never go back. The words blurred. The room blurred. Everything blurred. Because after all the lies, after all the betrayals, after all the years of believing she had destroyed me without a second thought, Lisa had been a prisoner too. And now, she was gone. I sold the house. I didn't hesitate, didn't linger in the empty rooms, didn't try to hold on to whatever ghosts still lived there. Lisa was gone. Harper was ruined. And me? I was done carrying the past. The foundation opened 6 months later. A nonprofit dedicated to exposing medical fraud, funded by the settlement money from Harper's victims, backed by doctors and whistleblowers who had spent years too afraid to speak. It wasn't just about Harper anymore. It was about making sure there were no more Harpers. The press showed up for the launch. Reporters, cameras flashing, the usual wave of shallow handshakes and questions from people who had no idea what it was like to lose everything. But then, through the sea of journalists, I saw him. Dr. Thomas Harper. He was sitting in a wheelchair at the back of the crowd, half hidden in the shade of a tree. His once proud frame had withered, his hands weak on the armrests, his face pale from months of court battles and public disgrace. But his eyes still held the same cold arrogance. Even now, even after losing his license, his fortune, his name. We locked eyes. And for the first time, I didn't feel hate. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel anything at all. I just nodded. A simple, quiet acknowledgement. Harper's jaw tightened. He looked away first. Because he knew. I had beaten him. I had taken everything he built and turned it into something good. And that would haunt him more than any prison ever could. As the event wrapped up, a journalist caught up to me, microphone in hand. "Mr. Harper." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Do you forgive him?" The cameras zoomed in. I exhaled slowly, glancing at the wall behind me. At the plaque mounted there. At the photo I had chosen to hang beneath it. Lisa, smiling, younger, before everything went to hell. And below her picture, the words I had insisted be etched in stone. "Truth saves lives." I turned back to the journalist, meeting her gaze. Then, softly, almost to myself, I said, "Some people don't deserve forgiveness. But I do." And with that, I walked away.